Today we're taking a first look at the Yodo. This is the new tier 10 Japanese light cruiser. So in line with the 155 Mogami, kind of like that, just a whole new line of those. And the tier 10 is pretty interesting, although I'll be honest with you, I had quite a difficult time playing this ship. What you're going to see is my best game I had. And it was a struggle to get there. This ship is not great, in my opinion. It's got some strengths, and I'm very conflicted on it, though. Overall, I do think it's just a bit of a meaningless ship. It's long range DPM, but not all that much DPM, and the range is very difficult to use. As you can see, we get an insane max gun range of, 18 kilometers, 18, 19 kilometers. It's pretty good. And we also have 18 guns, which are very floaty shell arcs, so it's hard to use them at longer ranges. And as you can see, it's a light cruiser, so it's pretty squishy. We definitely get a little bit lucky when it came to that curve first not citadeling us. What do we want to do in a light cruiser, though? We want to spam HE over islands. And there's quite a few islands that can work, but given how much broadside you have to show with this ship and how, well, unmaneuverable it is, it feels like a bit of a brick. It can be a little bit concerning when you suddenly get spotted over that island and you're sitting broadside to shoot all of your guns. I should make note that the third from the back turret doesn't have the best firing angles, and you're going to find that all the way up the line. It seems like it's a ship that when you're maneuvering in open water, it feels more like a 15 gun ship. And as you go down the line, it's the same. So the tier 9, instead of 15 guns, feels like it has 12 guns, because that third turret from the back is so difficult to use unless you're going completely dark and not getting spotted or shot at. But even assuming we can use all of our DPM, it's still not even that amazing. The HE DPM stock is 216,000, which, if you don't have any context, sounds okay, but the Des Moines has 274,000 HE DPM. And that, is a ship that does rely on its DPM quite a lot, but it also has the 203mm caliber, which means it pens 32mm of armor, where the Yodo does not. These are 155s, 150s, I believe, actually. Just 150s. And that doesn't pen 32mm. You only get 30mm of pen. So if you run IFHE like I am here, you're going to lack in starting fires, even if you hit a lot of shells. As you can see, we're over 100 hits, 1 fire, which is unlucky considering it's about a 6% fire chance with that IFHE. But it's going to happen when you take IFHE, that you're just not going to get fires. And if you decide to take no IFHE, you decide I want my fire chance, well, then you're not even going to pen 32mm. And then given this ship being floaty shell arcs and trying to shoot at longer ranges, you're not going to be able to hit reliably those superstructures at those long ranges, meaning you're going to shatter a lot more. So what I'm trying to say here is the DPM, while interesting, you've got 18 guns, it's not actually all that amazing. Something like the Jinan or the Worcester, for example, are in that 340,000 HE DPM range. And then, we can get a little bit crazy if we want to talk about Colbert, which is nearly 600,000. So the Yodo feels a little bit more like a heavy cruiser in its DPM and range, but it has light cruiser shell velocity and light cruiser shell pen. So it's a weird one to play. Even though I've had some pretty decent results in it, it's been a ship that I would much rather be playing something else. If I want this light cruiser, floaty shell arc DPM playstyle, I would much rather play something else than this ship, because I don't find the DPM is terribly satisfying. And if I want this alpha strike potential, like what we just saw there on the Richelieu, that's a pretty amazing salvo, I'm probably going to be more interested in playing something like a Hindenburg or even the Zhao, although we'll compare to the Zhao in a little bit. But Des Moines certainly is something I would be much, much more interested in playing. Even things like the Henry for its long-range damage output would be much more appealing to me than the Yodo. And the reason I'm kind of trying to bring things up like this when it comes to damage output is that's all this ship really has. It doesn't have any other battle impact. And I really do think that as a tier 10 cruiser, your battle impact comes from the versatility that you have to do damage to battleships, yes, damage to cruisers, but also impacting those destroyer engagements. And this ship struggles to do that. because it, like the Zal, like the Henry, doesn't have radar. It relies on your teammates spotting for you. And depending on the quality of teammates, depending on how aggressive your DD is or how uncoordinated you are, you're not going to actually have that much battle impact. And especially if you're using the Yodo's max range, you're going to have very little battle impact outside of some farming damage. And that's where you're going to lose a lot of games. You're going to be top score on your team with a lot of damage. And we're going to look at that in a little bit. But for now, we should talk about the Torpedoes, as they're just about to kill this curve first. They are very, very strong Torpedoes, although it's very difficult to rely on torpedo damage in a light cruiser who has to play at farther ranges. You're not a destroyer who's sneaking up to 6 or 7 kilometers away from a broadside battleship and launching your torpedo salvo. That is not happening here. So you're launching these 15-kilometer torps that do 24,000 damage. You're launching them from 12 to 13 kilometers away, or even further sometimes. So they're more zoning torps, is how I look at them. When they hit, they do a lot of very, very good damage, but I don't really want to rely on them. You should know, though, that both launchers can be launched at any angle that these launchers allow. So it's not like the Zao, where it's a very closed-off angle, or even like the Atago, where it looks like a very wide torpedo arc, but only one torpedo launcher tube can actually shoot to the back and one launches forward. So it's a very versatile and nice to use torpedo launcher system, which is kind of new for these Japanese cruisers. They tend to have some very weird, wonky torpedo arcs, which is nice. But again, like I said, I don't really want to rely on torpedoes for my damage in a ship that needs to play at farther ranges. And if you're trying to use this ship behind islands and spamming HE over islands, well, you're not going to be able to use your torps in that situation either. So it's a long-range, open-water torpedo spammer of some kind. So I'm really not sure what to make of this ship. I don't just want to call it a bad ship and be done with it outright, saying it's a useless line, but I'm really not sure how this ship is supposed to be played and where the battle impact is supposed to be. Notice the turning radius here is battleship-like. I'll talk about it more in the build, but both the turning radius and the acceleration of this ship are very much like a battleship. So a light cruiser that is pretty big and needs to go broadside. I mean, the turret angles aren't too bad for most guns, but if you want to get your full 18 guns off, you do need to give some broadside. And it's not the most maneuverable ship. It's a tough one to play open water as well, but you want to play open water to make use of those torpedoes. And yes, I'm leaving this full clip in here. Look at how long it's taking us to do a full turn to get all of our torpedoes away. It's a long time. This is not a maneuverable light cruiser at all. And it doesn't really have the DPM of a light cruiser. I don't know. It's a weird one. It's a very, very weird one. But I have had some decent games, and I'm going to be playing it some more, trying to figure it out a little bit better. Maybe the playstyle I'm using it as isn't quite right yet, and I could figure that out as time goes on. As a flanker, maybe that's really where we want to be. We want to be using these torpedoes, spinning on a flank, sending them out, trying to take advantage of enemy ships that are going to push, or trying to take advantage of off angles where other ships are taking focus. For example, this North Carolina not looking at us, right? So we can go reasonably broadside, get all of our DPM and our guns off on him. But as soon as he turns into us and looks at us, we have to turn in and angle a little bit more. Maybe this is a good role to be distracting, but at the same time, we're so far away from the caps, and we could lose on caps at this point, that even though I'm doing good damage this game, it's possible we lose this one because of this playstyle and this ship that I'm taking. It doesn't want to be front and center. It doesn't really want to be sitting behind islands, getting ready to get dev struck over an island. That kind of thing. It's tough, man. It's very, very tough. Although, coming into this late game, we do manage to clean things up and actually are going to win this one. So as you notice, a lot of our damage actually came in the late game here. Like I talked about in the mines video from the other day, where we're facing tier 10s and running for our lives in a light cruiser. Cruisers do their best work in the late game. And that's where I think the trouble comes in with the Yodo, where we don't have that radar to impact the early game battle impact, right? Where we're not contesting caps, trying to help our DDs win those engagements through a radar. we just damage output. So it's really difficult to impact the early games. And because there's a lot of blowouts these days, I know you guys have experienced those as much as I have, that a ship that excels in the mid to late game when there's less ships on the board, there's a little more freedom to maneuver, it makes this ship lose a lot of blowout games where it just doesn't even get started with its battle impact, and you feel kind of useless and you struggle to feel like this ship is any good at all. Even though I think there are some situations where it is good. Clearly, we're getting up to 230,000 damage. That's a great game for any ship. It's just one of those ships that kind of is weird in the meta. It's a long-range cruiser with HE spam. That should be the meta. The meta is long-range right now. And yet, it feels like this ship just struggles to have any sort of battle impact in the meta. Also, look at how much we're having to lead this Stalingrad, at least a little earlier in this clip. He's 14 kilometers away. You definitely want to be zooming out just a tick when you press shift to zoom in and lock onto someone. Just give your mouse wheel a quick scroll backwards to give yourself a little bit more room to see, because you're going to be leading targets a long ways. So we did manage to win this one and do reasonably well. We even landed some torpedoes. It's a decent ship. And yet, here's what my day looked like. First game, loss, top score. Second game, loss, top score. And I'm not showing this to you guys to, I don't know, brag or whatever. I don't even know what that would even look like, or stat shame or anything like that. I just want to show you that this ship is going to get damage. It's going to get base XP. It's going to show up top score. I mean, this was just a blowout where our team won, so 57,000 damage. The ship didn't even start to get going. It's a ship that doesn't have the battle impact to actually sway or win games. It deals damage, yes. It's going to do that reasonably well, but even then, it's just a ship in the match. It doesn't feel like it's taking control and taking initiative. It's a little too passive and reactionary for me, at least so far. I do want to have battle impact. I'm a pretty good player. I know what things I could be doing or engagements I could be taking to help turn games, to win games. And this ship feels like it can't take those engagements. It can't play aggressive. It can't take the fight to the enemy. It needs to have an enemy pushing into you, and then you just farm them as they've made a mistake because you've used your concealment to stay undetected. You're spinning around, sending torps out on a flank. Like we were here, notice how many torps were flying by. Not hitting anything, but they were zoning torps. And finally, we get to the Zhao. The Zhao comparison. This poor ship. I mean, we have much more HP. Our HE DPM is a little higher, although he does have the pen, right, with 203s. So it's a very similar ship kind of setup. Our reloads are similar, where we want to be using our HE to sort of alpha strike people. And yet the poor Zhao has far less HP to even tank in this engagement. And even though I do think Zhao is a little more maneuverable and easier to dodge things with, there's 18 shells. And of course I do have some help in this engagement as well, but we've already done 27,000 damage to this poor guy. Yeah, the Zhao is in a bit of a tough spot. Honestly, if we combine these two ships, I think I'd really enjoy it. If we gave Zhao this much HP, the torpedo angles, even the 15-kilometer torps that this one has, but you retained the Zhao guns, I think that'd be a pretty interesting ship to play. But as it stands, it's not like either one is all that good these days. So even though we did just counter the Zhao, or that was something that came up in the stream actually, the Zhao counter. The OP Zhao needs a counter, and the Yodo is here to provide it. So just a joke, right? It's a weird ship. The zoning torps, of course, can catch Smolensk off guard as they're pushing out around an island. This is a very satisfying clip. I was very happy about this. This was the last game of the day. After that clip of me showing you all those games I played today, I did play this one after. So we did actually manage to do reasonably well in this last game of the day. Actually came out with a win. So you're going to have to let me know what you think of this line so far, just from watching it. At least the tier 10 on my channel. But this is looking like a pretty mediocre experience. Maybe if you're looking for that light cruiser, open water torpedo engagement, it could be very interesting for you. But for me, I'm just left feeling confused. So to go over the builds that I was running, I tried a lot. I tried a full torp build, as you can see here. I did land on using IFHE. I do really value that extra consistency out of the guns. You'll notice that in some of these games, I was getting screwed over on fire chance, and some of those would have been with IFHE, and some of those would have been without. Although, I'm not really showing you all the games that I had today. I did try it without. I did try with heavy HE and sap shells, but then we get worse concealment, and then we're playing farther away, and then our shell velocity is horrible at those longer ranges, and we're hitting less shells, so even though we're taking extra damage on our HE, we're farther away, hitting less shells, doing less damage anyway, so why am I taking that? It's a weird one, man. I took Demo Expert on a lot of them as well. I ended up taking Survivability Expert sometimes too. You know, we can bump the HP up to nearly 60,000, which feels pretty awesome. But as it stands, I don't know what I would build on this ship. I don't think full Torp build is really worth it, because the Torps are just decent zoning tools. That's what I would use them as for the most part. So I would try and build guns and concealment if you can. Try and take SE maybe, that would be an interesting thing. But I would fully recommend Conceal. I personally like IFHE, although you could use something else yourself. Superintendent, awesome. Adrenaline Rush, awesome. Everything else, I'm going to leave that up to you, because I don't know what to take on this ship yet. On to the upgrades. Main battery mod 3. Yeah, the DPM is so bad, you don't want to be taking anything else. Even for the meme Torp build, I don't think I could deal with a 14-second reload on these 150 mil guns. That's just too long for me personally. I'm taking Conceal, although I did try steering gears. I tried to take propulsion mod, steering gears. I tried to a whole bunch of combinations here. But like I said, as soon as I did not take a full Conceal build, I played too far back and I had some really bad experiences because I'm just too far away to really make use of these guns. They're just too floaty. And then I'm not even taking prop mod here because steering gears is just required for a little bit of maneuverability here. The turning radius is awful. We have decent speed, but the turning radius and the rudder shift time stock are so bad. The problem with this yet then is I'm not taking prop mod. And personally, I found this ship to feel like a battleship when I didn't take propulsion mod. So it's not like you're going to be speed juking anyone without propulsion mod. And even if you do take it, it's still really not going to be speed juking anyone. So if you want a maneuverable ship, or as maneuverable as it's going to get, I think you take propulsion mod and steering gears mod too. But then you're missing out on concealment. It's tough, man. Like I don't have a solid build here for you. I'm sorry, but I don't understand this ship yet. I will be trying to play it more as I grind through it in a couple months. Keep in mind, early access, it comes out today when the video is live, I suppose, at least on the NA server. We're getting the update. As you can see, this is still the old port. We'll see the updated new visuals soon, which always look amazing. I'm excited for that, but less excited for early access. So 2 months from now, I'll be grinding through this line with all of you, and maybe I'll understand it a little bit better then. But until then, I don't get it. It's a weird line. I've had some decent games, but I don't see the battle impact. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.